Tell him to get some
Yeah.
videos going.
He does. I mean, he has a few. But I think the game's past like being like famously good. I guess you know what I mean. Like if you get good now, people just tell you to shut up.
Reese, what are your biggest weaknesses in playing Valewalker? I can't wait to hear
My
this
fucking
answer.
my group.
That loot crew too soft tonight.
It's a hard class
dude,
to play. I mean, if you don't
dude,
play it properly, you can totally
Reese, I
suck.
zerged down Kahzee last night in KO, and I was trying so hard to get the death spam so I could just send a picture of it all night. Dude, I like spammed it literally as soon as I saw him. I was like, run off! Oh my god! Valk baseline buffs, 2K16.
I'm all of a sudden lagging like crazy now.
I was gonna watch the Twitch and then I realized that's fucking stupid.
Oh, I opened it up so I could read the comments or whatever.
Well, is it on a delay or?
No, there's no delay at all.
So I can mute it at least,
Just
so
mute
I
it,
don't
yeah.
confuse the fuck out of myself. Okay.
Actually, Kahzee, do me a favor, just mute your mic too.
Shut the fuck up, Reese.
Alright, we are live now, so.
Oh, I better watch the cursing.
Alright, everybody. Those of you who are watching us on Twitch, this is the second to last class podcast. I am Cyrric. I am one of the knights. I am being assisted by Beebs, the community person for Broadsword, as well as Koe, another one of the knights. And I'm also joined by several players of the community that are going to represent the Valewalker, the Valkyrie, and the Reaver. So, guys, if you want to, we can just go down the list in order as you appear in Vent, and just kind of introduce yourself and what classes you're going to be talking about, and kind of how you started your Dark Age gaming.
Alright, well, in order of importance, I'll go first. I first played mostly on classics, played Bard and stuff like that, but I'm representing the Valewalker and I guess Reaver now. Valewalker's rank 9, Reaver's rank 5, but I mean I mostly play the Valewalker in a group, and yeah, I mean it's a super high utility class. It's fun.
All right, Kahzee.
And that was.
Well, obviously I'm Ewain's #1 Valk. I think everybody knows this at this point. Play a rank 12 Valk. Started on Classic as well, and then played Lancelot, I think, where I made an Infiltrator, and then when Classic died, moved to Ewain. I also can comment on V-dubs. I have a rank 8 V-dub, and then I have a rank 5 Reaver as well, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And Lou, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Lou. I play a variety of classes. I started playing Dark Age back when it released, when I was a young lad in middle school. I played most of my Dark Age career on Mordred and Andred and the cluster that they became, and then transitioned over to Ewain when that came out. I primarily play group and small man. Have some high realm rank stealthers, and my Valk is like, I don't know, 1003, 1004, something like that. Newer to the Valk class, but definitely have seen them go through their progression from start to finish, from being a new class that wasn't very good to a very, very powerful hybrid that they are now.
Excellent. Rickispanish.
Hey, I started playing in 2004 when I got back from Iraq. Only played for a couple of years. Bailed. Real life got in the way. Came back about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. Decided to play on mid since it looked like Hib was easy mode, and played a bunch of different classes. But I really enjoyed the Valkyrie because it was as close to a warden as I could be from what it looked like. As far as available classes on mid, I mostly duo or small man, and late night 8-man, usually with no healers, since apparently healers don't stay on late.
Excellent. So one of the first things that we can talk about are the different specs for these classes. So what do you guys usually spec your characters, and do you switch them up depending on your play style?
So for the Valewalker, there's only real one way spec. It's 50 Scythe, 40R, Rest Parry, or whatever. Like recently they added the PPA disease, or put it on lower timer, but it still doesn't really justify losing flagration, so nobody really uses it.
I mean, I guess I'll talk about the Valk specs. There's pretty much two specs that are really viable nowadays. Pretty much everybody goes 41 spear for roundhouse chain, and then there's the 47 Odin will spec, and then the pin 41, 42 spear shield spec. Really one or the other. You either go high Odin's will or high shield. You'll get a couple people who do this crazy sword spec, but generally speaking, those are the two primary specs. My personal playstyle, I do not like to play a peel tank, so I am a full push Valk, as I've been told. So I am the 47, 41, 42. So 47 on will, 41 spear, 42 men spec, which really allows you to just push and focus on interrupting and doing damage. Comparatively, if you were 41 spear, 42 shield, you would be responsible more than for peeling, and really depends on your group setup. So those are really the two primary specs that are available to Valk.
I'm spec'd a little bit differently. I'm 42 shield, 44 spear, only because I want to hit the higher weapon skill, 42 mending. I play midfield, which means if I need to do backup heals, I can. I can peel for the backfield if I can. I can pin for the assist train when possible, and then follow up with roundhouse. But I have to float. I have to play a lot of different roles because, like I said, we have a hard time running healers late in the evening. So I'm usually the backup healer as well.
Yeah, and then I just want to comment on solo. I mean, more often than not, I mean, people go 41 spear, 47 Otis will, 33 mend, 7 shield, 28 parry. I mean, that's pretty cookie cutter for spear Valk. Myself, when I solo, I'm 41 spear, 47 Odin's will, 42 mend, 7 shield, rest parry, and then I bump up with the extra RAs, which just comes from my rank. And then I think it's important, just kind of from what we said. I mean, Valkyrie is such a diverse class. I mean, you can do hybrid with like 35 shield, 41 spear, 33 mend. I mean, so there's so many specs out there, so you generally can't go wrong, solo wise. Pin is generally pretty important in groups for sure, but it depends on whether you want to be that peel tank. Personally, I don't play that way, so
Yeah, I guess I probably should have prefaced what I said by those are the two viable like group specs. There's definitely a lot of different play styles you can play with a Valk. It's one of the few classes that's available out there that can solo, duo, small man, group, Zerg, and be variable successful across all playstyles.
One thing I probably should have mentioned is that my RAs are completely built around group. I cannot solo with the RAs that I have right now. It's just not going to happen.
I wanted to comment on the Reaver real quick before I move on, but I play last time I played it 50 flex, 50 soul rending, 29 shield, with Cobra taking the life tap off it. It's turned more into a DPS race class than survivability, which I mean it still definitely has, but I found it more useful just to go full DPS and not really worry about pin or slam.
So do you find that those specs are viable across all realm ranks, or do you adjust them based on that?
For solo-wise, I would say if you're going the Spear Valk, you need the 28 parry, because your defense is going to be suffering, and you don't have the RAs to back up with Mastery of Parrying. But as I got higher rank, I started scaling back the parry, and I mean, I absolutely love 42 men, and sometimes I'll even spec like Mastery Healing 5 just for like the lulls, and seeing the insta heal for quite a bit is always fun.
Yeah, I guess in a group scenario with a Valk, you're basically until you hit rank 9, the only thing you're getting is debt and charge, and then maybe a little bit of purge and stuff like that once you get real high, but debt and charge pretty much take you to a pretty high realm rank. So the spec is really just a personal preference thing. It really has more to do with group setup. If you're running a hybrid, you're probably going to want to be more of a pin spec. If you're running a tanker, then the full Odin's Will spec is just as viable in my opinion, but opinions may vary. Really, you really don't have to scale because charge and debt just cost so much that by the time you get them, you're pretty high realm rank as it is.
I've run debt solo before too. I mean, it's even kind of fun running debt solo too, just because of the amount of CC in this game. It makes it a little more bearable when you have debt 9.
Yeah, debt 9 really it really surprises minstrels who try and just depend on their CC to do all their work for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They don't expect you to pop right out to them after they stun you and they try and run it. It's pretty funny, actually.
And for the Valewalker, you still only have one spec, so it doesn't change depending on realm rank. But Reaver, just as with any tank that has both shield and parry, obviously you have more fuck around points as you get higher rank, so it's always nice.
For solo, for the VW though, I mean, I actually like the PvE disease. I mean, it can actually be pretty helpful with kiting and multiples and all that jazz.
I mean, I would say
Blizzard Blade.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely come in handy against like a Valkyrie or something that purges your proc disease or something like that, or purges your casted disease. But I mean, you're definitely giving up a lot for that one ability.
Yeah, I mean, high mo parry Valewalker is 1v1 are ridiculous too. They're so hard to get through with similar hybrid classes. I mean, all the specs can. It really depends on playstyle. Essentially, realm rank really doesn't mean much if you don't put it into the conversation of like how are you playing, what are you trying to accomplish. Uh, obviously you're going to scale based on what you're trying to do.
Excellent. So,
Well, I mean, and then fighting a Vita that. Oh, go ahead, sir.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I mean, yeah, fighting a Vita with that grasping roots can be tough, and especially on a Valkyrie, I find that V-dubs are almost like the anti-Valkyrie, and they're one of the classes in the game that give me the most trouble. Kind of if they're, realm rank 6 or higher, and having debt 9 when I'm soloing actually kind of helps because of that grasping roots. But I mean, both classes are very fun and kind of that anti for each other.
So with that said, based on the various specs that you can put your tune, what do you think? And we can start with the Valkyrie. What do you think are the class's biggest strengths?
I would say the biggest strength for Valkyrie is that you can spec and get your RAs exactly for what you need for what your role is going to be. If you want to solo, you can build around being solo. You can template around being solo. You can set your RAs around being solo, and you're going to be very difficult to take out. But on the flip side of that, if you do that, you don't have the variety to be able to run with an 8-man very well, and you sure as hell not going to run with a Zerg. I hate running with the Zerg because there is no spec that I can run with the Zerg that I find useful for any other reason than running a Zerg.
I completely agree. As far as strength from my perspective, I mean, obviously having the PBO heal is huge. So that's a huge strength. Having charge 5, on a chain wearing class, that's awesome. PBOE snare and Odin's Will, I mean that's fantastic as well. Pin, I mean that's invaluable as well. Single target heals, DPS and roundhouse. I mean it's it's one of the classes over the years. I mean with hybrids, the new items that have come into the game. I mean they've become a very strong class. Not necessarily because they've received a lot of loves over the years, but templating has just become easier. They're still kind of difficult, but templating has made it a lot easier.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I support what you guys say. I don't know. I think right now we put far too much emphasis on, well, they're easier to template, so that's why they're better. I agree to a sense, but I think when we've through these podcasts we've talked a lot about that. And while they're easier to template, I mean, you still have to play the class. Valks are awesome because they can do everything, right? So you can push as hard as you want and heal yourself with the insta PBO heal while you have essentially 4 interrupts up, anywhere from 15 seconds a tick to, an 8-second tick and then a 15-second interrupt and then, a 1-minute interrupt. You have charge, you have debt. You can charge away from somebody, heal yourself. You can backup heal. You can cure disease. You can group heal. You can Icar reroute a caster with somebody. I mean, they're just so versatile. That's why they're so strong. They were just as strong 3 years ago. People just didn't like playing them because they felt their templates weren't as good, in my opinion, or however long ago it was. I don't know. I just think we put a lot of emphasis on, well, they're easy to template now, so that's why they're so much better. They're strong classes in doing what they do. They're kind of like a minstrel. They're a jack of all trades. They have their weaknesses and they have their strengths. I mean, they're great at doing damage against certain classes. If you have if there's a warden in a group and you're the only push DPS, melee DPS in the group, you're not going to do a lot of damage because you can't get through PBT because you don't swing fast enough and so on and so forth. The great thing about the class is that they're so versatile depending on what you're doing and who you're fighting and stuff like that.
But you
I just feel
definitely
like
made some. I would say you definitely made some good arguments for it to get nerfed. But you can't ignore the fact that the game has advanced to a point where templates have changed the class. I mean, the class hasn't necessarily changed, but the game has caught up to the class to where it has pushed it to the next level. I mean, you can't say that 4 years ago the Valkyrie could do the same thing it can do now, when Infernal Sleeves have been put in the game. I mean,
yeah, but I mean,
things have changed completely.
those things have helped casters just as much. I mean, casters never run out of power now. Having power management used to be a huge part of what they had to go through. I mean, we're not going to make it in a discussion about items. I feel like every time they're like, well, they're really good now because they're easy to template. We've talked about that with Thanes. We've talked about it with Valks and Stealthers and a variety of other classes. Everybody has the same advantage. I don't understand why it's a topic of conversation, I guess.
Well, and here's my perspective. I mean, I've played my Valk for years, so going from the gear I was wearing on Classic to the gear that I'm wearing today with the otherworldly stuff. I mean, if you don't think that's, I mean, that's.
I mean, those are two different servers, though, brother.
I know
those are
I know that, but
that's not a fair comparison.
I know, but you can't ignore mythical bonuses. I mean, back in the day, it was okay. Do I want 25 healing or do I want spell pierce? You know what I mean? And now you can get both.
I hear what you're saying. The only thing the new gear has done is make lower realm rank tunes able to be more competitive versus higher realm rank tunes with mythical bonuses and stuff like that. I don't know, man. I firmly disagree with the fact that you're comparing Classic. Classic's been gone for like 6 years now. I mean, just go from the time Ywain started, which is I guess we'll call the modern era of Dark Age, and compare it to the gear now. Yeah, sure, it's a little easier to template. The helmets have made it a lot easier. There's a few niche items, but generally speaking, everybody runs the same items across all classes in the game.
It's all apples and oranges. I mean, this isn't really pertinent to the conversation anyway.
You're right.
All right, Siri,
Yeah.
lead us away.
Yeah. So it sounds like the Valk is a pretty strong class. So what would you say about the Valewalker?
I mean, obviously, the strength is being able to cast and melee. I mean, having a life tap on essentially a chain-wearing caster is pretty cool. I mean, if you add in APS and AF buff, whatever. And then having disease and casting on the same class, I mean, it's obviously pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And just it's abundance of weapon skill and DDs. So.
From my perspective, with V-Dubs, I mean, grasping roots in a solo situation, fighting multiples, it's probably that and Valkyrie are kind of one of my favorite classes to fight multiples on because it's almost the easiest. But also, you know, V-Dubs have a high skill cap, but grasping roots make that a little easier. The dual life taps with immolation and your, you know, life tap, you know, the group heal. I mean, that's wonderful. You know, the rank 5 is, you know, is really nice. Interrupts, you know, 2 interrupts, and then you can throw a weapon in there for an interrupt. I mean, there's just, I mean, those are all some pretty strong benefits. And then if you spec for the PBOE disease, I mean, that's really nice, and the disease itself is nice. I mean, it's a fun class to play for sure.
But quick note, I would also throw in immolation as a weakness of the class. I mean, they got a level 50 nuke that has a heal attached to it that's on a cooldown, while trading off for a actual baseline nuke. So I mean, your baseline nuke is only 164 delve when it really should be 184.
Yeah, but they make up for it for all the utility they bring to the fight as well. I don't think there's any other classes that has a two-handed weapon that can stun rear and to the side, and a frontal cone snare, and a rear snare. I mean, there's a lot of utility that comes with a Valewalker.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree, but I mean, Valewalker's also a liability. I mean, when we run like a 5-tank push group, we just collapse on the Valewalker and he's done.
Oh.
I mean, I mean, they have a lot of utility if they don't get killed. I know, you know, obviously with their ABS buff, they basically have chain and stuff like that, but I don't know. I would have no problem seeing a change where their DD does a little more damage, gives them a little more viability in hybrids so they can play a little more passive and still be a contributor. And now they just get dinked and dunked by somebody if they're sitting in the backfield. I mean, their DDs aren't anywhere on a level with the Thane, and the Thane has pretty much the same ability to, you know, pull out a two-hand, they have shield, they can slam, they can stun. You know, they're not as good of a peeler, obviously, as a Valewalker, but, I mean, if I told you, hey, you want a Valewalker a Thane chain lightning somebody, or a Valewalker, you know, life tapping, what would you take?
Yeah, I mean, the class is so different, you know, solo versus group. I think they're in a great place solo. You know, Blizzard Blade is fantastic, Conflagration is fantastic. I mean, we've all seen videos from, you know, Metacode and, you know, Blizz, and I mean, it's a great class, you know, solo perspective. But yeah, I mean, group. I mean, it's very difficult unless you know those people or you make the group yourself to get a group, you know, because they, like you said, Lou, I mean, they don't bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, I mean, that's a personal issue, I guess. So, I mean, Reese plays as Valewalker in my HIB hybrid groups and HIB tank groups all the time, and I'm never like, oh my god, we need to change the Valewalker out. I'm always like, no, we need the Valewalker to be in there. I mean, they can still bodyguard and stuff too. They're a pretty strong class. Like Reese said, I like to see maybe their DDs get changed a little bit.
It's a lot of the issues I've heard in a lot of the podcasts, it's not that the classes aren't good, it's that the players don't want to put forth the effort to become better at the class.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, even if you're not the all-star Valewalker, you still have disease. You can still get Mach 1 and push. I mean, it's not like it's that high skill cap of a class to where if you aren't amazing at sidestunning people, you can't do anything. I mean, you definitely won't want to solo on a Valewalker if you're not good at sidestunning, but
yeah. Whereas, like, comparatively, I can't play Bard.
Impossible to play.
Like, I'm terrible at CC classes because I'm just not good at them. Like, I can go play. If you said, hey, log on my Valewalker and play it, I'd be like, all right, what do I have to put on the bar? And I'm confident that, you know, I'd be able to do a halfway decent job. you know, they're a good class. I melee tune, hybrid tunes are in a good spot. I think they just need kind of some semi tweaks across the board. The problem with all of these classes that we're going to talk about is there isn't necessarily a role for them because there's better classes to do what we want them to do in a specific
But
group.
just for the record, I would not want to see Lou and Valewalker.
That's why you don't
Yeah,
put
Reese
down.
plays Bard. I mean, you're okay, Lou.
Luke Crew coming for Pizza Party 2K16.
All right, but let's do the strengths of the Reaver.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the ability to have your defense up while you can still DPS. I mean, at one point it was pretty much the only class that had DD styles. I mean, I know it's been given out to a lot of classes, but being able to spam Leviathan while still having your shield out, still being able to parry, makes it pretty hard to peel you while you're still able to DPS others. Obviously, Reaver Bomb was nerfed, which kind of sucks, but it was probably needed. And then obviously it's one of the top solo classes because of its survivability, defense, while still being able to do offensive abilities.
Agreed.
So with that said, if a Valk, a V-Dub, and a Reaver all met on the battlefield, who would remain standing and why?
Equal realm rank, equal skill.
Yep. Equal
Probably
realm
Valk.
rank, equal skill.
Probably the Valk to heal himself.
It'd be between the Valk and the Valewalker, only because the Valewalker is able to cone snare, run, and then just life tap and pretty much rinse and repeat.
Valk can charge away and just heal himself and reset the fight every time when the other two classes don't have the
definitely
ability.
say one of the charge tanks.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I'd probably say the Reaver has the least chance of winning, just because just because it doesn't have life tap or heal. But I mean, I guess Valkyrie, I'd put the money on.
Valk, Valewalker, Reaver, and not in like a dominant fashion. If nobody jams and it takes forever and the fight goes on and on, I mean, a solo spec Valk is gonna probably beat the other three. I mean, which one I'd rather have in a group is a totally different conversation.
But obviously, in a three-way 1v1, it'll all come down to who dogpiles the other person. You know,
Yeah,
it can
right.
be somebody teaming up.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing we know for sure is the Reaver and the V-Dub wouldn't have Dex Quick. That's a given.
I mean, if they're too dumb to run a charge, then they're probably gonna lose.
You want to talk about items changing the game, man? My primary ability on a Valk that they're known for is negated by a pot that can be popped every 40 seconds now.
How can you say it's negated when you're forcing somebody to do something? I mean, if you're forcing someone to use a supremacy pot, they can't cast for what 6 seconds after or something like that.
Like 3 seconds, 4 seconds maybe.
That also shares a timer with the heal pot and power pot. So, I mean, it's not like you're
like
doing it for
500 gold
nothing.
to charge too.
Yeah, dude, that's a pretty costly move.
Okay with that.
Reese. Anyways, continue.
All right, so to kind of transition into the weaknesses of the class, I mean, we've already kind of established, based on the conversations, that the Valk is a pretty strong class. What do you see as its biggest weakness?
My ability to be cycle CC'd.
Alright, so I actually had to write this up because I gave it some thought. I think it comes to the total utility is lacking in comparison to the other realms heal roles, at least when I think of an 8-man group, not so much solo. Because you can take another healer or you can take another shaman, which is still not likely, over a Valkyrie and you have better heals. You can take a charge tank over Valkyrie and have better DPS. You know, somebody always brings something else to the game. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, at least for me, I don't find the points putting into Odin's Will worth it for that ablative. It does nothing to really help me because everybody's running plus 10 damage, plus 10 spell pierce. So it doesn't really minimize how much damage I'm taking. Our DD proc that comes with it is only a 10% proc.
Eventually going to get CC'd out, and you're going to lose the fight because you're going to be out of the fight for 30 seconds. you know, PBT. They've added obviously 4.3 speed weapons and stuff like that. PBT is a huge with basically with low weapon skill and a low weapon skill hybrid, breaking through defense is difficult, and your miss rate is fairly high, and blocks and evades and parries are fairly high depending on what you're trying to.
Another healer or another savage. That's where I think the weak point is as far as when it comes to a Valkyrie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a non-stowy debt tank, so versus a competent group, they're gonna do everything they can to just CC you out and leave you out of the fight for 30 seconds, as quickly as possible. And versus good groups, that is what's gonna happen. You're eventually gonna get CC'd out, and you're gonna lose the fight because you're gonna be out of the fight for 30 seconds. PBT. They've added obviously 4.3 speed weapons and stuff like that. PBT is a huge with low weapon skill and a low weapon skill hybrid, breaking through defense is difficult, and your miss rate is fairly high, and blocks and evades and parries are fairly high depending on what you're trying to collapse on. And with PBT being the way it is, those are the two biggest challenges: is CC and breaking through defenses to be really part of the train. I mean, their biggest pro is that they can interrupt, and their biggest con is that they can't do enough damage quick enough for the current state of the game before they're out of the fight.
Yeah, and then solo wise, as it touch, I mean, I agree with the Odin's Will line. I mean, I love it just because, I mean, I love the dex quick share and all that, but a lot of people only spec for the interrupts, and so it kind of depends on what the devs want that line to be. Do they want it to be a high DPS line, or do they want it to just be interrupts? Because, I mean, as interrupts, it's fine. I mean, you don't have to touch it, but, if you want it to be a utility line or a DPS line, they need some love. I kind of agree with Ricky about the magic ablative. I mean, it definitely does need, something. I mean, 90. Typically you go 47, Odin's Web you go high, and so you get a 90 point ablative, which isn't that much. And then other weaknesses. I mean, they don't favor lengthy fights as the fight goes on. More timers are used and burned. You have to manage your PoE, your charge, your purge, your heal, your snare, your power. Power usage is huge. Using your heals and your Odin's Will spells. If your sword, the end usage on sword is fairly large, and then of course they're very susceptible to disease, and of course CC and all that jazz.
Something I did leave out that is I consider a weakness in Midgard because, well, not every group can run two healers, like I mentioned before, is our backup healer is supposed to be a shaman, but a shaman is, a lot of their time is spent interrupting. It'd be nice if, at the higher level of mending, if Valkyries could get a spec heal, because if you're going to spec 42 in mending, why not have that option?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it comes down to the fact that there's eventually a CC liability, and they don't do enough. Everybody says they hit very hard, and they do hit very hard if there's no defense to get through. That's a very key if. Roundhouse can hit somebody for 6, 7, 8, 900 if they can get the two-part chain off, and if they can hit them. Low weapon skill, PBT, and the ability to be CC'd out is really where they have the biggest challenges. That affects all play styles.
No, but I definitely have that problem with my tanks too. I mean, like, it's really frustrating to me when I swing at somebody and they block or parry it. I think it's incredibly unfair that I spend my time to get these weapons and train these skills to where somebody can just negate it and not let me kill them. I think Broadsword definitely needs to look into nerfing the ability to stop me from hitting people.
Well, what I think the difference is, there was a time in the game where if you could get right up on a caster, you would have been able to drop them. That is no longer the case. You can blow everything you can to get into the backfield and get on a caster, and you won't drop them. And it used to be where yeah, casters could do a shit ton of damage. They could rock your world if they get on you before you can close the gap. But when you did close the gap, they would drop like a prom date. It's not happening anymore.
Yeah, but that argument also goes both ways. Tanks now are the hardest to kill that they've ever been. I mean, it's gotten to the point where heavy tanks, if they spec AOM 9, run an AOM charge, they're literally unkillable for however long they have their abilities up for.
Right.
Between Fury, Emerald Cloak, and whatnot. I mean, it's not like the survivability doesn't go both ways.
Right. And I completely agree. However, they're blowing all those points in AOM. Casters don't have to do that anymore. Very few casters run PD9 anymore, and they're still able to survive getting assisted on.
I mean, I hit casters hard as shit on my Valk. I mean, you know, if I spec Master Imagery 7, I mean, my roundhouse can hit up into the 600s, you know, and I mean, I agree, you know, if you can get that DPS off, you know, solo-wise, you know, if you're a Spear Valk, you can't backstun, I mean, you may as well not be playing a Spear Valk, because, I mean, that's truly the bread and butter. If you can't get the backstun, you may as well not even play a Spear Valk.
Yeah.
So what about
their weaknesses aren't.
Go
They're
ahead.
just. Sorry. No, I was just gonna say their weaknesses aren't necessarily weaknesses per se. They're just things that they aren't stellar at, where there's somebody better at it.
So what about the Valewalker? So we can at least, you know, Valk's getting a lot of conversation. We don't want to leave out the other two classes.
I would just say the Veilwalker, the weakness is lack of flavor and spec lines, I guess. You can really only go that one spec, and within that, it's pretty much the same thing no matter what.
I would just jump in with you too, Reese, just because I play with you when you play your Valewalker a lot. Your inability to push on a melee tune on a Valewalker, essentially. You're pigeonholed into a certain play style. You know, it's difficult to get on the train if you're in a tanker. Even if you're in a tanker, you're generally just the peel bot in the backfield because you can cast and do something from back there. I'm not advocating they get charge or anything like that, but they don't have a lot of ability to get up into the fight quickly, which I would definitely see as one of the weaknesses.
I mean, I feel like that's just a fact of playing a hybrid caster class. I mean, I wouldn't want a Thane pushing up like a tank. I wouldn't want a Veilworker pushing up like a tank. I would just like to see the ability to spec 50 Arboreal and get better casting abilities, getting a spec nuke that's, say, 184 Delve or something. That's not ridiculous. I mean, that's equal to the Thane nuke. But just justifying a different spec line other than going 50 Scythe, 40 Arb.
Both good suggestions.
Yeah, and I mean, from solo-wise, you know, my experience, I feel like it's a very unforgiving class compared to other classes like Valkyrie and Reaver. I'd say those two are pretty forgiving if you make, you know, mistakes. Under rank 5, you know, V-dubs can be, you know, one of the most difficult classes to play until you get that rank 5. And like, I mean, if you're not on point and you don't know what you're doing and fully understand the abilities that you have, they're very difficult to play.
Yeah, definitely. My Veilwalker was 50 on classic server, but I didn't get it past rank 2 or rank 3 until Yoane because it really was a difficult class to grind on. I mean, if you didn't have a group to carry you through the early realm ranks, I felt like I was kind of overmatched. I couldn't do anything about losing. I would just die to everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, comparatively to my Valk, like I felt like, I mean, you know, years ago when I re-rolled, I felt as soon as I got charge 5, I mean, it was bread and butter. I mean, after that, rest didn't matter. But yeah, Veilwalkers, I mean, they're pretty dependent on RAs and the rank 5 and all that jazz. So that would be just the only weakness that I would say.
I mean, if we transition over to Reavers too, the biggest weakness about Reavers is their lack of having a position in ALB groups. I think everybody would pretty much unanimously agree with that. I mean, they don't have a spot. They don't fit in an ALB tank group. They don't fit in an Alb caster group. They don't fit in a hybrid group. They just don't have a spot in Alb groups in general.
Yeah, and I feel like when they got nerfed years ago, I mean, I feel like that wasn't. I mean, I feel like they were over nerfed because I mean now, I mean they're okay, but like I never run into. I mean, back in the day, you know, on my Valk, I'd run into a Reaver and go, oh shit. I mean, nowadays, I mean, it's like, oh, a Reaver, you know what I mean? So I think, you know, taking away the second life tap, changing, you know, their side chain. I mean, it was just, it was a lot, and then of course that affects groups and stuff too. And you know, giving them charge probably was just a band-aid solution to the real problem with them.
I mean, I definitely feel like they have gotten a long way in terms of grouping. The single target ABS debuff is a big difference. The one step Leviathan has made a big difference. The only thing I would like to see changed for Reavers is change the life tap proc to like a spirit debuff proc or something like that. It would maybe help. It would help increase their melee damage on Levy and whatnot, but and then maybe nerf them a little bit in terms of solo. And then Toolies just said Levy needs love if they want to increase the delve by like 5 or 10.
They're also
having
the
a-
only. Oh, I was gonna say they're also just only the only realm where pin really isn't in any type of group setups that are commonly ran. You know, champs were beefed up and got pinned and had some changes, and you know you see champs out there in AV8 and stuff like that, and some Valks spec pin, some Valks don't, so that's available. You know, pin's a very powerful style. Alb's really the only group. Not that I'm advocating that Alb needs love, but it's the only realm that doesn't really.
Yeah, I mean,
your standard group setup.
The only response I have for that is Thurgis. I mean, I feel like
yeah,
that's
listen,
easy
Reese,
said.
we're preaching. Yeah, I don't play Alb, you know this, so I'm just, you know, I'm being fair.
Well, and I mean,
The,
I think maybe giving. Reavers don't have pin right now, right? So is that what you're advocating
No,
for?
They do.
Oh, see, so I mean, it's just it's a realm thing. I mean, it's a player base, you know, not using it to that aspect, but also, I mean, their aura is. I mean, they're just. I mean, they're. I can't even think of like. I mean, they're not good at all. I mean, they're just man.
I don't know. I feel like whenever I played Hib in the past, and like tower camp group or something like that, if a Reaver was smart enough to really use his pulses, it'd be legitimately frustrating. I mean, they're just as frustrating as a Valkyrie pulse, if not more, in a tower, because a Reaver doesn't actually have to think about what he's facing. It's just a PBA reps constant.
Yeah, but he has
moving.
to be closer to you.
I mean, what's the range on that? I mean, the range on the cone is only 750 and it's one directional. What's the range on the circle pulse? 350?
I
think so.
Uh,
But I mean, even if it is 350 within, it's 350 radius. Within that, radius, you can still rub another caster PBAing and not take that much damage if you're smart about it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is nobody plays them because there's not a hole for them. Everybody else in Alb is better than them. They don't fit a purpose right now.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's the problem we run into when we have a lot of these discussions about a lot of these classes, is that certain classes just don't have homes because there's somebody superior.
I mean, it comes back to what mentalists were a few years ago. You can't just give them love after love after love and keep giving them love until people play it, and at a certain point they become overpowered and then people are forced to play it almost. I mean, if you go back 3 years ago,
Ments are just as good.
Mentalist Ments were so overpowered, it was ridiculous. Like the group heal and everything, and I mean, it was a byproduct of the player base not playing the class, and Mythic just giving it more and more until people played it.
We don't need another mentalist.
Force people to play a class.
We don't need another mentalist in this game.
So I just want to comment on the auras. I looked it up. So yeah, it's 350, and then Valk's is 700. So I mean that's almost double. So I mean,
correct.
You know,
but
maybe
it's
the
one
range
directional.
on the auras.
It's one directional.
Right, but they still have to be closer.
And you have to be facing the right direction.
I can interrupt several people in front of me long before the Reaver can.
Right. We're not denying that. We're just saying that it is directional. You have to think about it more about what you're doing when you're interrupting. We're not saying that it's not double. We're just saying you have to face a specific direction. Where a Reaver can just run in and pop it. Doesn't have to face a direction. He can still lock down a number of people if he plays it right.
Also, clarification. In theory, Kahzee could interrupt those people.
Shut the hell up, Reese.
I think the spirit debuff, that is not a bad idea, because Thanes have an energy debuff that they buff, that they cast, and that would actually help out Reavers a lot. That is a lot of damage as far as being able to debuff your own procs. That's not a bad idea at all.
So in kind of the same vein as the weaknesses for those classes, are there any abilities within the spec lines that just have no use?
I'll kind of do a. I just want to go over Valewalkers real quick. I just want to go over Valewalkers real quick. Metacode sent me this long essay about all these Valewalker things. And then I just want to do it real quick. Nature's Shield, the level 25 scythe style, that's supposed to block arrows. It's next to useless. I mean, it delves for 60%. And I think Metacode said it somewhat works, but I feel if somebody reads the delve on Nature's Shield, they think it's this cool ability, when in reality it's kind of disappointing.
I thought the reason that it doesn't work anymore is because archery is considered magic now instead of actual physical attacks.
It works. It works. It just doesn't work well.
Yeah.
And I think I think one of the problems that V-dubs have with their scythe lane in general is, I mean, many things overlap. I mean, they have like a DD or a damage add buff, which doesn't stack with their casted damage add, so why would you use that? There's a few styles that give damage shield. Why would you use that? I mean, they don't have an anytime other than their taunt style. So the scythe line in general, you know, over the years is kind of just like, other than Blizzard Blade, you know, and Conflagration and Grasping Roots, I mean, blah, you know, so that's an issue with.
Yeah, and there's also a note out here about asking for Valewalkers to have a off parry or off evade combat style dehaste. I mean,
yeah, you have to use CL styles to get a dehaste or a bleed.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is the same issue a Friar has, but I feel any player willing to go through the effort to use a dehaste or use a bleed should be able to on any class.
Yeah. So from a Valk standpoint, the acuity share, either take it off I personally think it should be on a separate timer than the Dex Quick share. It can stay at 5 minutes at 47 Odin's Will. I'm okay with that. It can be a 5-minute timer. Like, that's cool. It's, you know, a beacon, like a mini RA basically. But the fact that it shares a timer with the Dex Quick share really just makes it absolutely useless, because Dex Quick's a minute at that spec and Acuity's 5 minutes. Just doesn't make any sense. Just make it its own timer, keep it at 5 minutes at that spec, and call it a wrap.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Valks suffer from the same thing V-dubs do. They have a few styles in their spear line that you know are very useful. You know, backstun, windmill, roundhouse, but the other styles are kind of blah. And then for me, the mending line, the casted health regens and hots, I mean, those are very situational, and even then, I mean, I'm probably myself the only person I really ever see cast them. And then even the insta hot and the health regen, people often get confused and they use the health regen when they should be using the hot. And I tell people that all the time, you know, especially if they have a bleed on them. I mean, the health regen's not going to do anything. But even the hots, the value's not very high. So I mean, those are, in my opinion, you know, very less than useful, and could, use some looking at.
Oh,
Whatever
it's
they
funny.
do to the shaman hots, they should apply to the Valk hots. Just hots across the board. Everybody should get the same.
What I actually wrote is, yeah, that's one of the major things, is that when we do spec in mending, the higher level in mending we get the regen, which does nothing in combat for us. Why not, instead of having that regen, replace it with the spec group heal? And if you want to keep their hots available, that's fine. Give it a bigger delve, so it actually ticks for a little bit better. Then we would probably use it more often. I use it when we're done with a fight. If some people are injured and we're rolling out, I'll pop the regen and the hot AO for the group, and then we run, and we'll be healed by the time we get to the next bridge or whatever. But otherwise, in combat, it's near useless. One thing that I do want to bring up, and it was actually a few people in my guild and others wanted me to bring it up. The spear, level 50 2-part chain, the perforate and Odin's madness. That's if you go 50 spear. The delve for the spear at 50 is 150 spirit damage, and the opening is a hinder. And it was brought up that the Valewalker has got a level 10 and a level 29 sidechain that opens up with a stun, and the cold delve on that is 198. And after testing it on Pendragon, the level 29 sidechain on a Valewalker on a similarly templated character does almost 3 times the damage as a level 50 sidechain on the spear. We can discuss that later. And then the other one, we have nothing in the for parrying on spear or sword that gives us a stun of any sort. The only stun we have with the spear is the rear stun, and on sword there are no stuns whatsoever. You have to depend on shield.
I
I
would
just want
just
to
say for
comment
the,
on the.
right,
Go ahead, Reese.
but the Valewalker, it's actually a PBA style, so I mean that also comes into play.
Yeah, so is
So
is the level 50
also,
on spear.
is it okay? Is it PBA or AOE? It's two
It's
different
PBA.
things. Okay. But also the group heal on a Valkyrie sounds like a bad idea, but I would also just like to say that I would be in favor of actually merging some timers on Odin's Will. The class itself was designed without mending, and it currently has mending, which it was given for free, without anything taken away or adjusted. So it just seems that the class is a little over the top of what it should be because of that.
What would your suggestion be? Like, what
Yeah.
timers do you think you should have less interrupts? Basically, is what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to see some of the cones merged, like combine the timer for shear and snare or something, just so you can't dump 10 different instants and erupt the whole entire group.
I think the best way to fix that without, because I think if you merge the timers, you're just going to nerf the class and nobody's going to run it in a group, and it's just going to be a solo class like many of our classes are. I think what you could do is extend the pulse timer out longer,
Yeah, I agree.
which would make them less ridiculous. Because when you're stacked on somebody, I mean, you can really interrupt a whole group, like you said. I think that
Are
if
you
did
saying the reusability on the pulse so you can't double tap it?
something like that, you'd be in a better position from a balance standpoint. But at the same time, that and just the ability to, just in general, like, you shouldn't just be able to do, like, it should be longer. It should be, I think it's like 8 seconds now. It should be 15 seconds or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I also just want to comment on kind of what Ricky said about the level 50 spear and Blizzard Blade on V-dubs. They can't really be compared because Valk and the Spearline have Roundhouse, which is a 200 delve crush damage. So if by choice you want to spec 50 spear for some odd reason, and you want to use that style, and then complain that V-dubs have a higher delve, I mean, you're really not playing the class properly, because we have, and I know it's not you, I know you're reporting for your guild or whatever, but that's why that style isn't higher, because Valks were given Roundhouse, crush damage, which is the only style in game with a DD that's melee resist.
Okay, and I hear you. What I'm saying is, if you are gonna spec 250 in spear, give us something that's more useful. Give us a higher level parry stun, for instance.
Yeah.
Give us something that brings more to it, because as it is right now on what I use roundhouse, I use the rear stun, and I use the anytime snare for if I'm dealing with like a heavier tank after I pin him or after I slam him. Yeah, I use the side snare, and then I run off to handle something else.
No, you're right.
For somebody who solos, for somebody that solos, if they do want to go 50 spear, which I've seen a few people do it, there's nothing other than run through, stick, and stun. And we should have a little bit more utility, because I love roundhouse, don't get me wrong, I use that bitch all the time, but we should have options to what we can do and how
No,
we do it.
definitely. I mean, if you choose to spec 50 in a line, it should be justified. I mean, it shouldn't be replaced by a level 41 style when you spec for level 50. I mean, there should be just some justification for using those spec points.
Right, but I
Especially since you're
think
giving up other abilities for it.
I think that's an issue with every class, though. I mean, every class, if you spec 50 into the line, what benefit, is there? The only problem I had was comparing a level 50 style to Blizzard Blade, because in the devs' eyes, they answered it with Roundhouse. And years ago, Windmill and Roundhouse was garbage. Before they changed the end usage on Spear, each style did PvE, and they were terrible. I mean, you never saw a Spear Valk. So,
I think you can make a couple quick changes. I would have no problem with the tick pulse, one not being able to be double tapped, and seeing the timer on the tick get extended to, I don't know, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 9 seconds now, getting it pushed back to 12 or 13 seconds. If you do that, you need to take the acuity shear and make it its own timer. It's 5 minutes. It's not a game breaker, but when you're pushing against those caster groups, it helps you. And I wouldn't have a problem with the heals being toned down a little bit, but I would want, and wouldn't affect solo small man, such as like.
I wouldn't mind the PBAOE for the heal to be toned down a
Correct.
little bit if we can get a spec group heal. If we can get a spec group heal to help make up for it, I'm all for it, because there's so many times where I could have used it and it probably would have helped my group.
I hear you. But you play in a very unique situation where you are the primary healer. I don't think we should be that good at healing. I think we should be able to throw out a clutch heal here and there and be able to take care of ourselves. I don't think the class was designed to be doing what you do with it. I think that's an oversight and something that is why people complain they're overpowered and they need to be nerfed. I would like to see something that isn't going to affect small man and solo, but will affect group play specifically to help counter some of the caster groups, all the pets, such as Castable and Instant Confuse. Gives them more utility, helps clear pets, but it doesn't affect the balance when you play like a hip caster group or a hip tank group or an alp tank group or anything like that.
Yeah.
And you would sacrifice a little bit of delve on the heal, because we weren't designed, like Reese said, Mend was added after the fact. We weren't designed to be primary healers in groups, and now groups will just run 2 Valks in one pack and be like, okay, we have heals for the group. That's not really right. The game wasn't designed in that way. The class wasn't designed that way.
I hate when groups say that.
Well,
It's just so not true. It's just so not true. If you think one Valk and a pack healer, or even 2 Valks and a pack healer can keep the whole group up, that's wrong, because their baseline heals are such shit. If you're near them and you can get their PvE heal, yeah. Or if they have time to cast their major while they're also trying to do everything. But like touching on what Ricky was talking about earlier in the podcast and kind of the general podcast with the Zergs, Valks are very, very useless in a Zerg, and that comes down to, okay, what exactly are they supposed to do? And that's something that the devs have to decide, because yeah, I kind of feel the same way he does. I'm spamming my group heal, what am I supposed to do? But a spec group heal maybe not be the answer.
That if you think that healers only just spam group heal to keep groups up, then they're probably playing them wrong. The good healers that I play with very rarely just spam that unless we're in like a tower keep fight.
I didn't say that.
Single target heals are how you get kept up.
Single target heal is what I focus on, but there are times when if I could have thrown out one group heal, I don't care if it takes like damn near 30% of my power, that might make a difference in a fight. I'm not asking for the world. I'm just asking for a little bit more utility in a group that may or may not be able to run 2 healers and a shaman. That's
I don't think we should change one class based on, and I say this in a very respectful way, your friend's inability to find classes to fit the mold of the current game. I understand that, but the meta is you need 2 healers to play on mid. If 2 people aren't willing to play that, we shouldn't adjust Valks in order to compensate for that.
right.
And I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. Like I understand because I've run into the same challenges you do, and then we end up running with 7, and we pick up an extra DPS, and we just have 1 healer. It just kind of is what it is. But because of that, we shouldn't change a class to compensate.
Right, and I know
for that.
the shaman is what it's supposed to be, like our backup
That's
heal.
basically what you're asking them to do.
But how often do you see a shaman backup healing anymore? How often do you see a shaman playing anymore? So I was thinking,
I mean, personally,
why not have us take up the role of a warden?
Because we already have that class in the game, and that would just further the separation between really good classes and.
I mean, ultimately, I think, what I'm getting from, personally what I want is not necessarily Valk to get all this love, but I've been watching every single podcast, and I think it's time that we shake up the meta. Make a class that has a bit overpowered, make something that was, strong, weak. Change shit. We've been running the same type of groups, not necessarily forever, but it gets stale. And when's the last time we've had a class balance patch? Shake stuff up. That's ultimately what I want to see with across the board.
So baseline buffs for Valks.
I didn't say
and
that.
No, I don't
didn't
like
say
that.
2K16.
Oh no, that's way too much.
if you, the most
I
successful game I've ever played was Guild Wars, and that was because every month they would change something, and if Dark Age did that, it'd be kind of cool. But it has to be like a continual change. You can't leave one class overpowered for
Well, here's
6 months.
the way. Sorry to interrupt, but the way I look at it, you have the option that you can go high offense with Odin's, or you can go high healing or mending and utility with mending, I should say, right? So I took that. I took that role. I said, you know what? I need to focus more on my heal, so I am going to go lower on my offense. So I only have, I think, 13 in Odin's Will, but I do have 42 in mending. I think if I'm going to invest that many points, I should have something to help make up for it rather than just the PBAOE and the single target heal.
But if you look at Lou's spec, he specs 47 Odin Will, 41 Spear, 42 Mending. So you have the 42 Major, which is a pretty considerable heal. You have 47 Odin's Will, which has the 90-second shear. You're not really giving up DPS for heals.
if anything, the Odin's Will line isn't really a DPS line. It's just an interrupt line that has damage attached to it. The DPS is laughable. Minstrel DDs hit nearly twice as hard.
If you say you want to put a group heal at 50 mending, I'm all for that, because if somebody wants to spec 50 mending on a Valkyrie, that's their prerogative, man. Who am I to say you don't want to be a heal Valk? But I'm just saying it can't be within obtainable of a true utility spec. It has to be a Mend Valk that can maybe melee and maybe have Odin's Will, but it can't be a Mend Valk with Odin's Will and melee.
I like that
see what I'm
idea. I like that idea, Reese. I like the 50 spec heal. Yeah, that's a good idea.
50 spec heal seems really, really nice for a good group heal. I kind of like that.
Because I think that's the problem, and is okay. Yeah, make it not a table where I can still roundhouse, but I can still heal the crap out of a group. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea. This is why Vegamite 2K16.
Yeah, it's the only way, man. It's my logic is undeniable.
All right, let's move on.
Castable Confuse. Any thoughts? I think
Move it on.
We need to do something to balance out.
I wouldn't use it, so I don't care. So go.
But you only solo, dude. You play in such a segmented
I know, that's what I'm saying.
population of the game.
Castable
But you
Confuse.
should care though. But you should care, because I care if we nerf something that affects solo play. You should care that if it affects group play. I mean.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, you want to talk about group? I mean, killing third pets. I mean, that's always pet clears is always an issue with mid groups. I mean, because they like to play these, hybrid or tank groups. But I mean, yeah, sure, you get rooted out, confuse some pets. I mean, yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, it sounds good to me.
I mean, if you want to like put it insta confuse and have it share a timer with the insta DD or something, I don't know.
It's not going to help when they're.
I was talking about castable confuse. I didn't think we needed insta one.
I mean, I don't think there's any really argument for no. So I mean, that's why I'm like, yeah. I mean, I can't think of. No, they shouldn't have that, because I mean, I don't see what a negative would be.
The castable confuse would be nice if maybe they give it to a class that's not used very often anymore, like a shaman.
Anyways, all right, sir. Let's move this bad boy.
Sure. So, what changes in the game do you think have had the biggest impact on these three classes?
So for Valewalker, it's obviously, I think for all three of these classes, it's for hybrids particularly, it's new gear. I mean, the ability to template hybrids has become 1,000 times easier. I mean, Valewalker still pretty much have to go shield hammer for casting, but they're still able to template in 10 Pyrrhus, 10 cast speed, 10 damage, while keeping all your melee TOAs, while still being like somewhat weaponless. I mean, if you would have done that 5 years ago, you would have been declared the template king.
Yeah, I mean, and I know Lou already kind of commented on the gear, but I mean, it has over the years, like specifically Valk and VDub. I mean, I can't think of something that's happened in the game recently bigger than items that has been like made the class so much better. I mean, back when they changed the RR5s, that made several classes, a little bit better. But I mean, nothing as much as this otherworldly gear, infernals, all that jazz. So I mean, that's what I say too.
And then for Reaver, I would say obviously they were given charge, or however long ago, it was a year or 2 years ago. I mean, I'm not sure if that was necessarily the correct choice of action for Reaver, but I think it's definitely made them more viable for groups, even though maybe it's not necessarily being used.
Yep.
So if items are one of the the big things that are causing the most changes, do you think that Broadsword should maybe kind of cut back on the introduction of said items?
Oh god, I mean, people have been saying that for years. I mean, one of the things that people hate when they come back is having to retemplate. I mean, it's constant. It's almost to the point. I mean, I'm not gonna bash Broadsword, but it's to the point where it's a little ridiculous. I mean, it's constant. It's their way of mixing up, the meta, but it's actually just griefing players that are coming back, especially when you can't go to get it by yourself without buying plat from Chinese farmers or whatever. But I mean, I think personally they need to cut back on adding gear all the time.
And I will take the complete opposite stance and say that I don't think you're in tune with running a smart businesses like they do. And then every popular MMO that grosses millions upon millions of dollars a year has expansion after expansion after expansion. And the whole point of playing a video game is to do things and to have fun. And there's many players who like getting new gear and like templating, and it's part of the game, and it has been for 15 years.
So you would rather template than go out in RVR?
Insta gear. I don't think templating is that hard. I don't. I mean, I played on Mordred for 8 years. You want to talk about templating? You've never experienced pain until you did it there. At the end of the day, if they don't put content in, people cry there's too much, there's no content. If they do put content in, well, it takes too long to template. I haven't played in a while. I'll be honest, it's the same argument that people have at free to play. If you really want to play Dark Age, and if you really enjoy playing Dark Age, getting a new piece of gear isn't that big of a challenge for you, because you'll go out and do it. You'll invest the hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, however long it takes you to do it, because you really enjoy playing Dark Age. Same thing with people who play free to play. Oh, I play I play if the game was free to play. Oh, okay. Then you would pay. You'd play if you had to pay too. You don't really actually play. There's a difference.
Cutting in and out, Lou.
The only thing I would say for gear is that I would prefer we kind of stop the advancement of gear and just kind of leave the level it is now. If say they want to update SI loot, have it on tier with the otherworldly or Darkness Falls or Dragon gear, to where there is more variety in what you can do. It's just not necessarily you have to get this next set of gear. You have to do this. I would like to be maybe I have one piece from DF, I have one piece from Otherworldly, I have one piece from SI, I have one piece from Dragon. You know, it's not just the same 5 items I put in my templates. Like no matter what, I know I'm going to put a Zoe Bracer in a Caster template. I know I'm going to put a War Shadow Bracer in a tank template or whatever. You know, whatever it may be. You know, maybe you swap out 2 rings for depending on solo versus group template or something, but pretty much every template I've made in the last 2 years had the same 8 items in it. And then one more thing, can we actually have the streamer actually play the game? Stand in the PK is fairly boring.
There's a Brighton up on the hill. Get him.
I would like one of the things that I think would be good, even for people because they might want to try it, is update some of the old TOA items. Maybe make it so that some of the ML10 items have more variety. You know, not everybody. You know, what if they have a one-handed voltaic weapon or something like that? Just have some more variety, but something that you have to get out of doing ML10. I hate PvE. I do hate it. But there are some other options for weapons that I would love to be able to have on different realms as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like when they updated the SI dragons, they actually put on different versions of the rings. Like for Midgard, they put a Ring of Vater, which has the same stats as the caster ring, but it just has different resist and some different charges. Which I mean, it gives a slightly different flavor to templating. Like maybe I could use this ring instead of this. It has another level of complexity, but it didn't necessarily make it something else that was better.
Right.
Just
It's just
different.
I don't think the items are that like the new items. I have plenty of tunes that I play that don't have new templates that compete just fine. That have templates that are 2 or 3 years old, and maybe not for solo. But again, I don't. That's your personal decision. If you try to play a game that's literally says massively multiplayer online game, meaning with multiple people, if you choose to play solo, you know.
There's no reason to get into that. There's no.
Well, it
reason
is when you bring up items and gearing, and you're talking about how there's too much content and it's too difficult.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Okay, so you want people to come back and play the game, right? You are talking about a 13-year-old video game, okay? So you are talking about people who probably haven't played in a very long time, who have to update their templates, okay?
EQ2 just came out with an expansion. The game's older than this game.
A reinforced helm that costs more plat than you can actually carry on your tune, and that isn't an issue, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
it's a player-driven economy, man. It's like buying a BMW. I mean, it's the same thing as buying a Honda, but you know, it's nicer. People want to pay more. I mean,
there's no rule that says you can't quest for it yourself.
And there's plenty of opportunities.
But you can't do it yourself. You can't do it yourself because you need other people.
Man, to be honest with you.
I'm telling you, when people come back to the game, that is one of the things that they don't want to deal with. Is having to constantly retemplate. And if you
once
don't
a
think
year,
that's an
man.
issue, you're blind.
Once a year is retemplating.
I can
all
go
the
back
time?
to Guild Wars since freaking beta and still wear the same gear.
Then you're playing the wrong game, then, brother. I hate to say it.
And that's why Dark Age is dead. Because of people like you who
then why are you contributing then, man? Why are you contributing then if you think I'm playing right now, I play all the time. It's fun.
Because I want to see it come back.
It is
Yeah,
back.
Kahzee. Is your account even open, Kahzee?
I don't know, is yours, Reese?
Alright, it's nice that we
Okay, so
can have
here's
these
another-
spirited comments.
We're talking about items and really we're talking about hybrids here in this podcast. And one of the questions that I don't really think's been totally addressed is the idea of what out of the box things could be done for items and templates. And we talked about the ability for hybrids, especially say Valks and stuff, to be CC'd out for 30 seconds. But okay, so we've got the otherworldly, necklaces that came in, and they've same as the TOA stuff from 10 years ago, where you've got your Mez feedback stuff. Great, it'll get you out of the box if someone just hits you once, but as we all know, people are spamming Mez or whatever. Do you guys think if, say, otherworldly necklaces would also give like a approximate 60-second immunity for Mez or stun or whatever, would that change your thinking or grouping of these hybrid classes?
My take on that is every single class that is melee hybrid should have access to Det, because Det 9 is one of those things that helps that. There's a ton of CC in this game, and I'm telling you, if you don't have Det, you are pretty much screwed.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously all have access to Det. I also think that they shouldn't have access to Stoicism. Obviously, CC has a place. CC has a place in this game. There's a reason this game has been successful so long. It's because the dynamic between hard interrupts, CC, and that kind of stuff. But I don't necessarily want to see somebody pop an item and have free immunity for a minute.
No.
Because say you mez somebody and they have stun immunity, and they purge the mez, and you try to stun them, and they're immune to 2 timers for essentially no reason. I don't see no reason, but yeah.
CC cycling. Really, only if we talk about specific items for specific classes, I like to see more variety in fast speed weapons for Valks. Like, there's no viable option for a fast weapon other than the new DF weapon right now. And obviously, you do majority of your damage via proc damage, so.
I would love to see crafted gear be able to pick your 5th slot on it. It would obviously help hybrid classes template if you could have a dex cap arms instead of hit cap or whatever. And it also give armor crafters a little more business because they have to make more specialized gear versus just pumping out 100 pairs of sleeves that are all the same 5th slot.
Okay, so speed weapons and potentially new options for crafted gear. Any other sort of out of the box things that would help hybrids?
I think bring back some of the ML10 option. Well, not bring back. Introduce some options. Like maybe have a spear that also works for the Astral Divine Light, so it's a heal weapon. Or maybe I don't know. Maybe I want Plaguebringer to be on a spear. Have it so that there are some more options available to us.
Maybe you could combine that with the whole updating SI or updating older zones, like whatever epic monsters are out in Lynn Barfog or something like that. Maybe have them drop the counter or the equivalent of an ML10 weapon, ML10 spear that has the Divine Light spread heal on it. Something like that. Just so you're not introducing better items, just items with more flavor to it.
I just would love like 4.1 anything other than the DF weapon, anything that's fast. It can really have any proc on it. Doesn't really matter. I really prefer.
If it doesn't matter, why don't you use the demonic?
I do.
I do.
So you just want more variety.
Yeah, just more variety. That's all. That's all.
10-4. Personally, weapon-wise, I love the DF spear just because it has that weapon skill proc, which solo-wise is pretty huge.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think I would not be against options for that as well, because I kind of enjoyed when there was a miscast on it, but I would even take a spell cast reduction on it as opposed to the debuffing of its own damage. Shit, give me a debuff for crush on it and I'd be very happy.
Yeah, everybody would love that, but
you're
that's not gonna
dreaming
happen.
here, yeah.
I would love to. I just want to. I'm greedy. I think that every melee class should have the ability to get a pet procking weapon, uh, in whatever spec they choose. So that's really kind of what I was getting at.
Well, I run Voltaic Spear as long as we have an AUG healer in the group. Otherwise, it's
It's so slow, man. It's not worth it.
yeah, unless
Yeah,
celerity's
especially
up,
when you
it's
got
useless.
PvT and stuff.
I think these hybrid classes can, really be more of a benefit if they just can pet things up quicker, especially if they're not going to be able to kill things. Across the board, that gets all hybrids, whether it's a Thane or a Valk or a Valewalker or a Vamp or whatever it may be.
We don't have to introduce more weapons. We just have to have variety on what we've already got.
And I think that goes for. I think that goes for all gear that we have. I mean, I think people want to go back to SI. They want to go, and Broadsword's been doing a good job with that. Taking us back to, those places for Otherworldly. But they need to keep doing that. I mean, that's what the player base wants.
Warney36 just said something about the awareness charge, and well, I'm not too sure about the whole nerfing of the Medal of Honor charge. I mean, I guess kind of if you use an item, it might as well be worth using. But I think Broadsword should be a little quicker about changing things. I mean, if you look at the recent nerfs, I mean, they pretty much wait 6 months after something's been abused for 6 months to do anything about it. I mean, I think that kind of drives people away. I mean,
I assume that was standard to see if people would stop crying about it before they take the time to code it out.
I mean, I feel like it should be a balancing act. I mean, if something's being abused, it should be nerfed. If they nerf it too much, they give it a love. I mean, there should be somewhat of monthly updates or monthly balancings to where maybe 1 month the vamp is overpowered, 1 month the whatever is overpowered. You know what I mean? Just so, like Kahzee was saying, it's not stale. People can't just do the same thing over and over for 6 months and collect all these realm points in a somewhat cheesy way. When, I mean,
well, it might not be the aspect of the actual classes to throw in that variety. It could be having like these events instead of always being like a Caledonia or whatever events in the BGs. You can have different type of events. Maybe those ruined keeps aren't always the ones right by the shoreline. Maybe it's one of the keeps in the middle. So it forces people to move to different areas. That's not part of the classes. That's part of, Broadsword shaking shit up. And that's, it's not the player's fault.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
no,
you
know
also
what
have to
you're
look for what can be done quickly. I don't think it's that hard to tweak a dove on something or something like that. But I think it's pretty difficult to move a keep.
correct. Whereas like so they have I wouldn't have a problem if the DDs on like Reaver styles were bumped up a little bit to make them more compatible for groups to take a spot from an armsman or from somebody or from whoever. I mean, ultimately the goal should be that all of our classes across the board are played in some level of equality.
Yeah, I agree. Every character class should be viable for an 8-man group. That's pretty much what the goal should be. Doesn't mean that you always want to run it, but it should be an option. It shouldn't be like, oh fuck, we don't want to run that class because it brings nothing to the group. There shouldn't be any class that's like that.
I mean, the only class I can only think of that wouldn't fit that would be assassins and necromancer. I mean, everything else, as long as you're playing a proper spec line, it's completely viable. Even a hunter or a ranger. I mean, yeah, I know. No, the thing was class, not spec line. A Read Your Fire is more than desired in an outcaster group.
So,
I mean, you can't force.
I think we're getting a little off topic and kind of spreading to other classes and the ones that we're focusing on here. So, if we could kind of direct it back more towards these three classes and kind of change topic a little bit. I know we're already running about an hour and 15 minutes. What about the Realm Rank 5 abilities of these classes? What do you think they're useful? Do you not use them? You just can't live without them?
I want a pet clear. That's all I want. It's terrible. I never use it. It's barely on my bar. I appreciate the fact that it's good for small men. I'm sure it's pretty much useless in solo. I want a pet clear. Something that doesn't overpower them in solo and small men, but makes them better for groups. And that's all I want. Pet clear on Valks. Pet clear, pet clear.
I would probably
if you
agree
give
that sorry, I'd
what
probably
you
agree
got?
that Valkyrie is poopy, but just to do Reaver real quick, I mean the fact that Reaver rank 5 was nerfed to where you can't really Reaver bomb anymore unless you have 8 Reavers on top of people. I would like to see something change to where it's more useful, or maybe put the delve back, but take the last tap off of it, or somewhat along those lines. Because right now it's just a nerf rank 5, kind of a shell of its former self.
The Realm Rank 5 on a Valkyrie is not useful unless you're running a group. I never once popped it when I used to solo, ever. It's been useless. What I would like to see is for maybe a nerf down version of Fury of Nature, where it helps recover the group's health and mana with the damage that you do. Obviously, it's only good if you're not CC'd, but if it's something that you could pop when you hit charge, and you could actually help keep your group alive while you're still swinging and doing damage, I wouldn't want the double damage aspect of the Fury of Nature. That would be entirely too much for Roundhouse.
I haven't really thought of anything that I would want to replace it, but I mean, just like everybody else said, I mean, the Valk one we wouldn't miss. I mean, 75% Arcane Siphon, woo, especially these days with, Template and 20% Arcane Siphon. I mean, it's like, the only time I'll ever pop it, like, in a group per se, or a small man, is if, like, I see a healer, spreading for days, I'll hit it to help with that. And then Reaver, yeah, the only thing that one's ever been useful for is Reaver Bomb. I mean, how boring is that? Years and years of just Reaver Bomb. And then obviously the best one out of the three is the V-Dub. So
Yeah, I mean Valewalker rank 5 only got better with it being. I think the delve was doubled and was given magic ablative, which is pretty awesome. I mean, it'd be nice if the duration was longer or some of that, but I mean, you definitely can't complain about it.
All right, so since we're running long, we can end with one of the question that if you could do anything to change your class without making it so overpowered, what would you change?
Just
Uh,
one.
for Veilwalkers, I would add a spec nuke or change immolation. Like maybe remove the heal off immolation and just change it to a 184 baseline life tap. I think it would definitely help. Just their overall consistent damage.
I would say for the Valks, my only real complaint is lack of diversity for master levels. I would just say, either update Stormlord or give us a choice of something else. I mean, that's really my only gripe.
Um, a couple of things really, but it's not so much for the group. It's parry reactionary style that's actually worth using on both the sword and spear line, and maybe a group spec heal at a higher mending. I wouldn't want it at the lower mending. You would have to spec towards it. And as far as MLs go, yeah, Stormlord is near useless. I would rather take either Battlemaster or Banelord any day of the week over Stormlord. Stormlord's just, it's just stupid.
And then for Reavers, I'd like to see Leviathan return to a higher delve. I mean, even recently as like a few years ago. I mean, if a Reaver stunned you or slammed you, you were somewhat scared about dying. And now like Levy really it just tickles. I mean,
Yeah, I'm never,
it
I'm never
isn't
like, oh my
much.
god, a Reaver's on me,
Coupled,
I'm gonna die.
yeah, I mean, coupled with the slam nerf, I mean, it's not like a Reaver's gonna slam you and drop you. I mean, I would just like to see Levy return to a more impressive style.
Hey, I got a.
Castable
Go ahead.
confuse. Throw that one back out there.
I have a question. Maybe one of you guys could answer this. I don't know if anybody's out there that could answer this. Why are there some classes that don't even have evade 1? Because I noticed that. I didn't notice it until later on when I came back from the game, but Valkyries don't even have evade 1. Is there a reason behind that? Anyone?
No idea.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't
some
know
classes don't have
the
evasion
game
anyway.
logic, but I would just say the fact that they were a chain class with charge, and I mean, I would just chain class with charge, man. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, but don't Reavers have evade?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was a catacombs thing. Who knows?
If they screw us on everything, can we at least get evade 1?
I mean, I feel like that's a great
see
attitude,
how-
man. I mean,
I mean,
just
we're definitely not getting screwed. Just
if you keep your expectations low, you'll never be disappointed.
Hey, man, you
Yeah,
plan for the
I mean,
worst, right?
I just think the Odin's Bow line needs to be looked at as a whole in the class. I think it doesn't do anything great other than interrupting. You do the same at a 21 spec as you can as a 47 spec. Those would be my closing thoughts about the Valk. I would like to see 47 get me a little more bang for my buck than DDing for 175 every 15 seconds.
All in all, I think Valkyrie is a solid class, though. I don't think it needs much love. However, Midgard does need a third wall climber.
And with that note, wrapping it up.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining the podcast tonight. It was a very good discussion. I like how it got heated there for a bit. But I want to thank Vegamite, Kahzee, Lou, and Rickispanish for joining us tonight, as well as
Vegamite.
yeah, Vegamite, as well as Beebs and Koe for joining and helping me out here. So thank you guys very much.
And Reese,
Yep.
yes, she is. Response to your text, by the way.